Hey everybody, this is your buddy Carl for the daily Bible reading. And yes, we are catching up here. This is May 30th. On the May 30th, I did one this morning, earlier in the day. And so May 30th reading will probably come in this evening. I'll post this a little later. So for May the 30th, let's dive right in. May 30th of 2020 is a Saturday. If you're watching on this May the 30th of 2020, our Saturday, Leanne and I have kind of prepped stuff for the well. Tomorrow is Pentecost Sunday if you follow the church calendar, and we are going to do a special celebration of that. So you can watch the live stream on our YouTube channel, which can also be found on Roku if you do Roku, or this Facebook page, which those both always stream it live. And we are following protocols for where the world is at in Nashville, Davidson County, but it looks like we can gather, as people feel free to do that, and they can distance in our room as they can. So we're a small church, and we can kind of, the numbers stay pretty limited in there anyway, but we are open to the public now on May the 31st. The Well of Nashville is open to the public. And of course, if authorities change the protocols, we'll go with the flow. But bless you all and stay healthy and wise. And we speak healing into our days and look for the miracle of the destruction of this plague in the name of the Lord Jesus. I believe that's the power of the church to pray. We believe prayer works. We believe Jesus gave his people dominion and authority in the earth. And that's one of the things. So I'm not going to try to unpack all that and explain it all, but it is scriptural that the church has authority. I'm not going to break it down into the details, but that's not a vague issue in Scripture. And at the same time, we move with grace and mercy and peace and understanding. We don't judge other churches or people how they believe. We don't do that, and we shouldn't. Jesus calls us to live in peace with each other and to be in unity. And even if that's not conformity or even thinking the same way or believing exactly the same way. And yet there's this thing where we can challenge each other and have discussion without angst and hate. And I pray that that's possible. Also, we're praying for the situation in America, for justice to reign in this land. All these different events where authorities get out of control, and that sometimes when the police, when police go bad and something goes in the ditch, and they're out of control, and tragedy happens, and blatant, injustices. The church has to speak. We have to pray. We have to take action in the way to press our leaders for authorities to be accountable. So there has to be a call for justice in those situations, and we pray for that too. At the same time, not condoning violence, and we can protest and have our say and speak peacefully in the nation, but I never believe that the church should ever in any fashion support destructive protesting. I don't see that as an example anywhere where Jesus did that. Of course, people would say, well, Jesus went into the temple and turned over tables and, had whips and got the money changers and the crooks out of the temple. A little bit different protocol there, I think, if anybody was honest. In that extreme case where Jesus was angry and like, no, my house shall be a house of prayer, there was not this kind of destructive, just mindlessness to that. That was definitely a move with purpose and in a really focused moment and place. Jesus didn't go randomly about destroying people's homes or properties or businesses just throughout the city to make a point. And so, guard your heart when you feel like, yes, we got to have justice at all cost. And that's another discussion for another day. Does that mean that we can't have, very strong interaction when nations go to war or when authorities come, that becomes very complex. If our heart is to be peacemakers, we're following the calling of Christ in our lives. And I think that's the overlying protocol we should look for. Anyway, that's probably for somebody pondering that. And yet we pray for truth and justice and integrity to reign in our leaders and the authorities, and especially our police departments and all of our public servants to serve and protect. I mean, that they are called to live by that mandate. And again, it's a small fraction of those in those situations that have lost their wits. There's kind of there's an evil in our day, I believe, that coincides with the less, a lower level of godliness being taught, and I won't go into all that, removing the 10 Commandments and not having prayer in school and not holding people to a standard of rightness eventually trickles into all sectors of society, doesn't it? Man, okay, so that's another discussion, but this is the daily Bible reading. Leanne and I were discussing all of these issues, and I told Leanne, I said, well, we're reading the Old Testament. Look at it, the book of Samuel, King David and his sons. Some are good and some are bad, right? Such a strange thing there. So anyway, let's watch what happens here. We're going to pick it up for the reading for May 30th in 2 Samuel chapter 15 and 16. Now 15, remember I read a little bit farther, 15 verse 23, and so I will pick it up. Remember, Ita said to the king, I vowed by the Lord, that's 21, and by your own life, I will never leave you, King David, right? Then 23, everyone cried loudly as the king and his followers passed by. They crossed the Kidron Valley and went out toward the wilderness. Let's pick it up there just to overlap that reading. So Zadok and all the Levites also came along carrying the Ark of the Covenant. We read that earlier. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar offered sacrifices until everyone had passed out of the city. They left. Then the king instructed Zadok to take the ark of God back into the city. If the Lord sees fit, David said, he will bring me back to see the ark and the tabernacle again. But if he is through with me, then let him do what seems best to him. Whoa, folks. Okay, I had to read that again. Verse 25 of 2 Samuel. Look here, David's heart is whatever the Lord's will is, whatever his heart is to do, whatever is best for the Lord, then let him do it. Doesn't that sound like Jesus? Lord, I'd like to see this thing happen when crucifixion was coming, but not my will, but your will be done. Look, King David is speaking in the same heart. So that's beautiful. Let's move on. That's verse 25 and 26. Now verse 27, the king also told Zadok the priest, look, here is my plan. You and Abiathar should return quietly to the city with your son Ahimaaz and Abiathar's son Jonathan. I will stop at the shallows of the Jordan River and wait there for a report from you. So Zadok and Abiathar took the ark of God back to the city and stayed there. David walked up the road to the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. His head was covered, and his feet were bare as a sign of mourning. And the people were with him they covered their heads and wept as they climbed the hill. When someone told David that his advisor Ahithophel was now backing Absalom, David prayed, "Oh Lord, let Ahithophel give Absalom foolish advice." Yeah, so his own advisor went to work for his deceiving son. Man, the place is falling apart. Follow here. When David reached the summit of the Mount of Olives where people worshipped God, Hushai the Archite was waiting there for him. Hushai had torn his clothing and put dirt on his head as a sign of mourning. But David told him, "If you go with me, you will only be a burden. Return to Jerusalem and tell Absalom, I will now be your advisor, O king, just as I was your father's advisor in the past." Then you can frustrate and counter Ahithophel's advice. So David's trying to I'm going to send another advisor to try to counteract what's going on. Zadok and Abiathar, the priest, will be there. Tell them about the plans being made in the king's palace, and they will send their sons, Ahimaaz and Jonathan, to tell me what is going on. So David's friend Hushai returned to Jerusalem, getting there just as Absalom arrived. Okay, here we go. Chapter 16 of 2 Samuel. And we're going to read all the way through this chapter. When David had gone a little beyond the summit of the Mount of Olives, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, was waiting there for him. He had 2 donkeys loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 bunches of summer fruit, and a wineskin full of wine. What are these for? The king asked Ziba. Ziba replied, the donkeys are for the king's people to ride on, and the bread and summer fruit are for the young men to eat. The wine is for those who become exhausted in the wilderness. And where is Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson? The king asked him. He stayed in Jerusalem, Ziba replied. He said, today I will get back the kingdom of my grandfather Saul. Interesting. In that case, the king told Ziba, I give you everything Mephibosheth owns. I bow before you, Ziba replied. May I always be pleasing to you, my lord the king. So look at all this weird betrayal. King David would have taken care of all these people, and yet power corrupts. Isn't that strange? Especially when somebody does not have a humble heart after the Lord. And if they only knew where their power and their authority comes from. As King David came to Bahurim, a man came out of the village cursing them. It was Shemaiah, son of Gerah, from the same clan as Saul's family. He threw stones at the king and the king's officers and all the mighty warriors who surrounded him. Get out of here, you murderer, you scoundrel, he shouted at David. The Lord is paying you back for all the bloodshed in Saul's clan. You stole his throne, and now the Lord has given it to your son Absalom. Well, this guy doesn't know the story. David never laid a hand on Saul. It was God's doing that was the downfall of Saul and his sons. Isn't that amazing? But this guy has it in his head how it must have happened, right? And that happens to everybody. That happens now. Wow. At last you will taste some of your own medicine, he says, for you are a murderer. Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Abishai, son of Zeruiah, demanded. Let me go over and cut off his head. No, the king said, who asked your opinion, you sons of Zeruiah? If the Lord has told him to curse me, who are you to stop him? David's just bummed out so much he doesn't care anymore. Then David said to Abishai and to all his servants, my own son is trying to kill me. Doesn't this relative of Saul have even more reason to do so? Leave him alone and let him curse, for the Lord has told him to do it. And perhaps the Lord will see that I am being wronged and will bless me because of these curses today. So David and his men continued down the road, and Shimei kept pace with them on a nearby hillside, cursing as he went and throwing stones at David and tossing dust into the air. Imagine this sight. The king and all who were with him grew weary along the way, so they rested when they reached the Jordan River. Meanwhile, Absalom and all the army of Israel arrived at Jerusalem, accompanied by Ahithophel. When David's friend Hushai the Archite arrived, he went immediately to see Absalom. Long live the king, he exclaimed. Long live the king. Is this the way you treat your friend David? Absalom asked him. Why aren't you with him? I'm here because I belong to the man who is chosen by the Lord and by all the men of Israel. Hushai replied, and anyway, why shouldn't I serve you? Just as I was your father's advisor, now I will be your advisor. You notice the phrase that he used? He didn't say he was really coming to serve Absalom. I am here because I belong to the man who is chosen by the Lord and by all the men of Israel. Remember that phrase. It was very strategic that he said that. He didn't say, I'm not here for Absalom. Follow this. Verse 20, then Absalom turned to Ahithophel and asked him, what should I do next? Ahithophel told him, go and sleep with your father's concubines, for he has left them here to look after the palace. Wow. Absalom is really going nuts. Then all Israel will know that you have insulted your father beyond hope of reconciliation, and they will throw their support to you. So they set up a tent on the palace roof where everyone could see it. And Absalom went in and had sex with his father's concubines. Absalom followed Ahithophel's advice, just as David had done. For every word Ahithophel spoke seemed as wise as though it had come directly from the mouth of God. We're going to pause here and let this rest. We'll pick this up tomorrow on the daily reading. So there you go. Absalom, he's just become a scoundrel. For May 30th, today's psalm, we're still in Psalm 119, starting at 113 through 128. And remember, I'm reminding you, 119 is following every letter of the Hebrew alphabet, a little sonnet with each one. So at verse 113, the Samek, right, starts at 113. Here we go. I hate those with divided loyalties, but I love your instructions. You are my refuge and my shield. Your word is my source of hope. Get out of my life, you evil-minded people, for I intend to obey the commands of my God. Lord, sustain me as you promised that I may live. Do not let my hope be crushed. Sustain me and I will be rescued. Then I will meditate continually on your decrees. But you have rejected all who stray from your decrees. They are only fooling themselves. You skim off the wicked of the earth like scum. Wow, Lord. No wonder I love to obey your laws. I tremble in fear of you, and I stand in awe of your regulations. Verse 121 starts with the letter Ayin. There are the Ayin. Don't leave me to the mercy of my enemies, for I have done what is just and right. Please guarantee a blessing for me. Don't let the arrogant oppress me. My eyes strain to see your rescue, to see the truth of your promise fulfilled. I am your servant. Deal with me in unfailing love and teach me your decrees. Give me discernment. Give discernment to me, your servant. Then I will understand your laws. Lord, it is time for you to act, for these evil people have violated your instructions. Truly, I love your commands more than gold, even the finest gold. Each of your commandments is right. That is why I hate every false way. And we will pause there for the daily reading for the Psalms. Now, moving on quickly to Proverbs for May 30th, Proverbs 16, verses 10 and 11. The king speaks with divine wisdom. He must never judge unfairly. Well, a righteous king should, right? Verse 11, the Lord demands accurate scales and balances. He sets the standards for fairness. So even the Lord calls us to live in righteousness in all of our dealings. We don't separate our spiritual life, our religion, from living in the earth. God's saying, have integrity in your work, in your business, as if God is setting a standard, and we should. We work as unto the Lord, no matter who our bosses are, no matter who our leaders are. We are always working for the Lord and His standards. All right, May 30th. John, here we go. We're picking it up in the Gospel of John, 18, verse 25. And again, even with this, I moved a little past that. Remember, Peter had denied the Lord, so we were past that. He denied Him 3 times, and then the rooster crows, and he goes out weeping, devastated, realizing Jesus' own words confirmed that he would be a coward at that point. He lost his courage in the middle of the pressure of what was unfolding at that time. So we'll pick it up at 28. Verse 28 of John 18. Jesus' trial before Caiaphas ended in the early hours of the morning. Then he was taken to the headquarters of the Roman governor. His accusers didn't go inside because it would defile them, and they wouldn't be allowed to celebrate the Passover. So Pilate, the governor, went out to them and asked, "What is your charge against this man?" "We wouldn't have handed him over to you if he weren't a criminal," they retorted. "Then take him away and judge him by your own law," Pilate told them. "Only the Romans are permitted to execute someone," the Jewish leaders replied. This fulfilled Jesus' prediction about the way he would die. Then Pilate went back into the headquarters and called for Jesus to be brought to him. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asked him. Jesus replied, "Is this your own question, or did others tell you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate retorted. "Your own people and their leading priests brought you to me for trial. Why? What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not an earthly kingdom. If it were, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish leaders. But my kingdom is not of this world." Pilate said, "So you are a king?" Jesus responded, "You say I am a king. Actually, I was born and came into the world to testify to the truth. All who love the truth recognize that what I say is true." Wow, that is huge, folks. Another 5-star statement. Of course, this is Jesus speaking. So, of course, Pilate says, "What is truth?" Then he went out again to the people and told them, "He's not guilty of any crime, but you have a custom of asking me to release one prisoner each year at Passover. Would you like me to release this king of the Jews?" But they shouted back, "No, not this man. We want Barabbas." But Barabbas was a criminal, a real revolutionary, and a murderer, a scoundrel. Okay, so for today, May 30th, we're going to go chapter 19 up to verse 22. So let's do that. Then Pilate had Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip. That hurts, man. If you've ever seen one, this was torturous. The soldiers wove a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put a purple robe on him. "Hail, King of the Jews!" they mocked as they slapped him across the face. Pilate went outside again and said to the people, "I'm going to bring him out to you now, but understand clearly that I find him not guilty." Then Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, and Pilate said, "Look, here is the man." When they saw him, the leading priest and temple guards began shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" "Take him yourselves and crucify him," Pilate said. "I find him not guilty." The Jewish leaders replied, "By our law, he ought to die because he called himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was more frightened than ever. So this is an interesting statement, folks. We always wonder if Pilate really believed that Jesus was the Son of God, but fell under the political pressure. Look at that. Wow. Yeah, so he's more frightened than ever, and he took Jesus back into the headquarters again and asked him, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave no answer. "Why don't you talk to me?" Pilate demanded. "Don't you realize that I have the power to release you or crucify you?" Jesus says, "You would have no power over me at all unless it were given to you from above. So the one who handed me over to you has the greater sin." Then Pilate tried to release him, but the Jewish leaders shouted, "If you release this man, you are no friend to Caesar. Anyone who declares himself a king is a rebel against Caesar." Isn't that weird? The religious leaders are using secular law against Jesus because they can't deal out any kind of, legal justice in their mind. It has to come from Rome. So they're being connivers here. So sad. When they said this, Pilate brought Jesus out to them again. Then Pilate sat down on the judgment seat on the platform that is called the stone pavement, in Hebrew, Gabbatha. It was now about noon on that day of preparation for the Passover, and Pilate said to the people, "Look, here is your king." "Away with him," they yelled. "Away with him and crucify him." "What? Crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the leading priest shouted back. Then Pilate turned Jesus over to them to be crucified. So the authorities, basically, at their will. And folks, for today, we're going to pause there. That's up to 22. Or actually, it is coming up. But I want to pause there. That's an important break right there. We'll pick up the reading tomorrow. You those that have followed this and that are believers know this, but it's amazing to hear it again and unpack the details of what was going on and try to discern the atmosphere of the time. But we know it's coming. If you're a follower of Jesus, we know this story well. So I bless you in the daily Bible reading, and we will pick it up again tomorrow on Pentecost Sunday, May 31st, for another daily Bible reading. Bless you all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.